All right, welcome to Bleav in Chargers. Apologies for the lack of content here over the last month or so, but feel like we're going to get ourselves into a bit of a rhythm here. Combine just wrapped up. We got free agency starting. Then we'll have the draft in about 6 weeks, and certainly going to be a lot of conversation to be had based on each of these free agent signings, whether it's one of their own, somebody from outside in the market low. But expect the Chargers to do a lot more than they did last year, just in terms of, they have money this year. Last year, they had no money. Last year, they were $35 million over the salary cap coming out of the combine. The day we record this, we don't know what they're doing with Joey Bosa yet, but depending on what they do with that $36 million, that could end up being $25 million in cap savings. Same thing with Trey Pipkins, $9 million in cap savings there. I mean, you could be talking about anywhere from, as it stands right now, $60 million to close to $100 million of space to sign players. Now, I'll just start with this, Lo. The one thing that I take away from the combine is what they said at their exit interviews is exactly how they want to move forward. They want to bring as many of these guys back as they can. Now, look, Slater's going to get an extension. That's going to be sniffing $30 million a year. I feel like that's fait accompli, that's going to happen. And then they already did Elijah Molden. They did that right before the combine. He is I thought he might be number 4 in the pecking order. I figured Slater 1, Khalil Mack 2, and then I should say 3. Then Elijah Molden 3, and after that, it was going to probably be Puna 4. That would be their top 4 of their own guys that they really want to bring back. So they've already got Molden squared away. Now we'll be waiting for that Slater extension. But I kind of what I'm getting at here, Lois, I just don't. It's my big takeaway from the combine. I don't get the sense that Joe Ortiz and his staff and Coach Harbaugh not going to go out looking for Milton Williams or Josh Sweat of the Eagles. They're not going to go out looking for T. Higgins, who's been franchised anyway, but I get the sense it's going to be more of where can we find value in this market so we can plug holes to free us up to pick whatever player we want when, we're on the clock and we don't have to feel the burden of filling a need. Let's just go get the guy that we think is the best player on our board.
Yeah, Money. I think it's the latter of the two. Go out and find the best need that you need. And it's like, hey, if you got Doge in the house, they're cleaning up, they're under the cap. Last year, it's just like, hey, you were 35 million over, you couldn't go out and do what you needed to do, but you still were able to compete. And we're able to compete at a very, very high level. You brought in some talent. And now this year, you're going to be able to say, look, we can go out and spend if we want to spend. But I'm with you. I think they're going to bring back the players that they've had, the guys that was a part of this franchise that they're trying to build and continue to build. The Khalil Macks, like you said, the Puna Fords in the middle, a run stopper, getting Mack. Don't know necessarily what's going to happen with Bosa, but you bring in Molden, you got him already signed up, and of course that premier tackle, you're going to have to pay him. So let's take care of the guys within. Let's take care of the home first. If we can take care of home, then we can go out and say, look, let's add some value. But the biggest thing, like you just alluded to, this organization, Harbaugh and the staff that he's at, Joe Ortiz, they're going to say, let's take care of home first, and then we'll go out and add.
Yeah, I think, the one thing that is going to be tricky is with the salary cap bumping up again is more teams have money, because the salary cap took a pretty healthy jump. So there are, as opposed to, teams being right up against it, or now we got to figure out how we're going to get camp compliant. And we saw that, right? We just saw that today. We're recording this on Wednesday, March 5th. And I saw it coming. I felt like this is, as soon as they franchised Trey Smith, I knew that Joe Thuney was going to get traded because it makes too much sense. It's like, hey, we have no money. We're right up against it or right over it. And Joe Thuney is essentially, 8-9 years older than Trey Smith. They both play the same position. They need to figure out tackle. And so they trade Thuney to the Bears. They get that money off. They franchise Trey Smith. And now he's sitting there at $26 million. He's going to probably be a guard that makes anywhere from 21 to 23 million bucks a year. And, that's one of the few instances of a team that's got to start doing the dance. Otherwise, I got the guards up. So Trey's going to stay in Kansas City. You got Will Fries. You look at him and you're like, well, Will might be the next because Trey was, franchised. Will's going to be getting 15, 17 million bucks at guard, and then I'll just go bargain shopping. I'll go get Kevin Zeitler for a year. He's 34, played well in Detroit. They know him from all those years in Baltimore. Well, the market's the market, man. And teams need interior linemen. So now Kevin Zeitler, that you thought you were going to land for a 1-year, $6-7 million deal, is probably going to be getting a 50% premium on that. And that's what I think is going to make this interesting because, look, the big news yesterday was Davante Adams was released. We knew it was coming. Do I think that's a realistic target? I do. I think Davante at 31 wants to win a Super Bowl, wants to play for a competitor, wants to play on the West Coast. Now he's got a lot of choices, Rams competitive, 49ers competitive, Chargers competitors, 3 teams right there in his home state that he can pick from. But I think it's such a natural fit for them that if you're sitting at 22, and I think that goes for one of these guards as well, whether it's Patrick McCarry or Kevin Zeitler or Will Fries, if you want to take a big swing on Tevin Jenkins and hope, A, he can stay healthy, and B, he can be mentally right. He's a hell of a player. His body's just betrayed him a little bit. But I think ultimately what they want to do is, can you plug holes with players you evaluate and you believe are impact players at a reasonable cost where you can bring as many of these other guys back. So when you're sitting there at 22 and you're staring at Matthew Golden, or you're staring at, let's say Booker slides, or, you just want to be in a position where you're like, let's just take the guy that we think is best, because we got Davante. Now we can take Colston Loveland because we got Davante and, Zeitler and Dahlman at center. We don't have to take Gray Zabel. We can take, Omari and Hampton at running back and feel good about it. And I think that's ultimately what you're going to see here between now and the draft with the Chargers, is just trying to fill those holes with players that you deem not to be, you're not overpaying, right? Because that's what happens. I mean, it, Lo. You overpay in free agency. That's just the way it goes.
Right. It is. And I'm the Chargers. I think you look at Harbaugh and you look at Jortis, I don't think you overpay. You're going to overpay, of course, but I'm not going to take risk. What I mean by that, hey, look, that's football. And guys are going to get hurt. That's just immutable. It's unchangeable. That. That's just the way football is. But at the same sense, I got to take guys that are healthy. Last year you went in, you rolled the dice. You said, look, we don't have a lot of cap space. We're going to go bring in guys that are injured, but guys that we think can play, but we hope that they can last. You look at a Bosa, you look at some of your running backs, you look what they did. And unfortunately, time didn't help. They didn't stay healthy. It hurt the Chargers. It hurt them this year. So I think that when you're looking at free agency and you're looking at the draft, I think, money, I think you got to err on the side of caution. I think that you were able to get by last year and plug and play and put some guys in injury. You said it would take slowly to get these guys back on the field. But if you're the Chargers, I don't think I go in that bucket this year. I think I try to go with proven commodities, guys that shown you durability, that they're able, because the type of football and the brand of football the Chargers want to play. They want to be physical. They want to get after you. You want to pound the ball. So you got to have guys that are durable to last in Harbaugh offense and defense type of scheme. So to me, it's about taking those for sure guys that are going to be healthy, that's shown that they have a proven track record, and you address that in free agency, and then of course during the draft.
Yeah, I think it's so funny too, because the defense was so good last year that we focused. I feel like I've just narrowed my focus so much on the offensive side of the ball, and then I think about, because it feels like with the offensive line is always going to. There's always going to be a run in the draft, and this year you're starting to feel that already. I mentioned Tyler Booker. We've been talking about Tyler Booker for a couple months now, and after what I heard coming out of the combine, that guy's not going to be there. Membo's not going to be there. O-line is just such a premium position, and now you're so thankful that they took Joe Alt at number 5 last year, because you're talking about Will Campbell, who had his arms measure at 32 3/4, and it's very Slater-ish, right? Slater had his arms measure at 33, and everyone's like, oh, you're going to have to kick him inside to guard. And Tom Telesco's like, the hell with that. We'll try him at tackle. And he's now one of the best tackles in the league. But you have these players with flaws, and they're still being talked about as top 5 picks. I mean, and so I think that's and so what I'm getting at is, I keep forgetting that there's 2 sides of the ball, because the Chargers, allowed 17 points per game last year. And it's like, no, you could be sitting there at 22, and next thing you know, you're staring at Kenneth Grant out of Michigan, who is 340 pounds, is running a sub 540. They're lining him up off the edge on obvious passing downs. He is an absolute freak of a player. and I was talking to, I think it was, I can't remember who I was talking. Oh, it was Bruce Feldman
Yeah.
from Fox, and he does the
Right.
freak list. And when I brought up Kenneth Grant, he said, I'm going to tell you a story about Kenneth Grant. He said, I was doing a Michigan game, and he had not even played a snap yet. And I was talking to Coach Harbaugh about his defensive line and basically his lines and how good they were and what they've been able to build. And he said, these guys are great. He goes, but I'm telling you right now, man, I got one. He's like, I got one. And when you see him, you're going to see something like you've never seen. This kid, Kenneth Grant, he said he was a 3-star. And he said Harbaugh had basically just given him the heads up, like, just be ready. He goes, so if you're trying to line things up, just know that, like, if Kenneth Grant is sitting there for whatever reason, he slides, and on most big boards, he's in the top 15 players. But if he ends up sliding, it would be hard to envision Harbaugh letting Joe Ortiz and his staff get anybody else because of A, he was right on him, and B, you know, the proof is there. I mean, the guy has done it through his entire college career. And so, and also I think, Lo, like, I do think there is some recency bias, you know, and prisoner of the moment. I mean, what did we just see? What did we just see in the Super Bowl? How the Eagles
just killed
that interior.
The interior line absolutely killed Kansas City. Mahomes couldn't step up in the pocket. The 3 technique and the 5 and the wide not, they just absolutely murdered him. You keep him in the pocket. You couldn't let him scramble outside, but they did it from the interior. So you better make sure that you address either these guards. You better make sure, or go get someone that's going to put you in the same position defensively, like you're talking about, young man from Michigan. He's a game changer. He's a game wrecker. He's a wide body. He can play up and down the line. He's a plugger. He can do it all. So if you keep quarterbacks in the pocket and they can't step up in the pocket, you're in trouble, and especially if you have disciplined ends. And that's what you look at. So I think you got to see arguably one of the greatest, may go down as battling Tom Brady and Joe Montana. When you think about what Mahomes has done thus far, he looked like a mere human. He looked subpar. He got panicked. He got happy feet. They were hitting him. He didn't know where they were coming from. They kept him in the pocket. He had no running lanes. You have to realize what they did to one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the league right now, with great defense. And if this young man has it, I don't care. You go get him. So Harbaugh knows that if he's there, Harbaugh is going to take him.
Yeah, and I love that you brought, you know, the other side of it up at the start of the point you were making, and that is, it works both ways. You know, why were the Chargers not able to travel to Kansas City? Because the interior of their line, really their whole line, played their worst game of the year against Houston, but it was birthed from the interior of that line not being able to do anything. So that's why, as excited as you might get about Matthew Golden running that 4.39 and probably going to be sitting there at 22, or Colston Loveland, the tight end, or Amari and Hampton the back, like, don't forget, you know, what it looked like on that Saturday in Houston, and why the Chargers didn't advance, and for all the incoming that Justin Herbert's taken, and all the excuse making for Patrick Mahomes not having enough time to throw. So what do you expect from him? It's like, well, his pressure rate was lower than Herbert's against Houston, and nobody seemed to be willing to make excuses for Herbert that he didn't have any time to throw and he was under duress the whole time. So what I'm saying is, if you want that name, if you want Colston Loveland, if you want Amari and Hampton, or if you want, you know, one of those skill positions, don't forget, if Booker does slide and they sprint and hand it in for a guard, or if they decide to go Gray Zabel at center, or if they decide to go on the other side and it is Kenneth Grant or it is Derek Harmon, that ultimately that's where this thing's got to start, man. That's where this thing has got to start. And when I'm hearing that, you know, when I'm talking to Lance Zierlein, who's as good on O-line as anybody you can talk to in Indianapolis at the Combine, and he's like, and I say, what do you think? Like, if Tyler Booker's there, do they run it in? And he cuts me off mid-sentence and goes, Tyler Booker ain't going to be there. He's gone. Yeah, that guy's going to be gone. He's like, and I said, what about?
He killed you. He's like, right there. You're like, he's gone. You're like, oh.
He's like, what? You think you know some sort of secret? He's like, you don't think that everybody, all 32 of these teams, don't know that Tyler Booker and not Jalen Milroe was the leader of this team? That he was that he was the guy that freaking led the locker room? That even last year, that the only reason J.C. Latham ended up getting drafted number 6 because Tyler Booker was so damn good and was in him sideways every day to work out. Like, they all know that. He's like, he ain't going to be there. And I was like, well, what about Membo? He's down in the top 10. I'm like, oh, boy. Here we go. So
You're like,
it's
I'm
like,
going home. Leave me alone. Leave me alone.
yeah,
I can tell you without a doubt, money, and I'm willing to take this bet. Me and you could do. We could bet a milkshake, or you don't eat that, or
I don't.
fat
Lactose
burger.
intolerant. Can't do that.
We'll figure something out. I guarantee
Exactly.
it's going to be interior line. It's either offense or defense. I don't care who's on the board. This team will build in the trenches. That's who Harbaugh is. That's the guy he is. So I'm guaranteeing this. If whoever's there, it's going to either be offense or defensive line for this team. It's about building in the trenches.
Yeah. You know what else is building? Bet Online. They're building the world's, well, they aren't building, they already built it. The world's most trusted betting platform. It's your number one source for online betting in 2025. If you're a seasoned fan, if you're a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. It's the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL to UFC. BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. Every three-pointer, hat trick, BetOnline has got you covered with odds, stats, and more for every single game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. The one interesting thing, and I think it was Mike Tenenbaum that I was talking to, that he brought it up. He's like, to me, he's like, the Chargers are in that prime trade down spot, just because it's a thin wide receiver class. Let's say Golden slides to them at 22 and a team just feels like they got to go up and get it. Well, maybe you slide back and you're going to get another pick. You're going to get that team's 2. You're going to get a 3. Maybe you get next year's 2, 2 and next year, something along those lines. We know how much Joe Ortiz values picks and wants all those comp picks. But he's like, if you're talking defensive line, you're going to get a player that has almost, not an identical, but a very similar grade by sliding back 10 spots than you are at 22. Like that's sort of the way this draft is you've got 10 or 12 premier prospects. And then after that, there's just a real heavy middle, like, I don't want to say middle class. It's an upper class, right? There's the elite class. And then they feel like there's this really good upper class of, if you don't get Omarion Hampton or Ashton Genty, like, hey, you know what? I'm feeling pretty good about Travion Henderson, about Quinshon Judkins, about this next tier of running backs that you can now get in the second round. Tight ends, feels like there's just the big 2 and Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. And those 2 have certainly separated. But then you get out of there and people are like, hey, man, Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon and Elijah Arroyo, just the supreme athletic. You're going to get one of those guys in the second round that, who knows, could end up being bad. It feels like I had that conversation about almost every position. When you're, I talk about Kenneth Grant, there's people comparing Derek Harmon of Oregon to Chris Jones. Like, I mean, that's what we're talking about at the interior defensive line. Same thing with edge. You get to edge, and I mean, Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart. I mean, Shamar put on a show at Indy, so he's going to end up going way up there now. I mean, the guy was putting up Von Miller-like numbers. So, like, it's a deep. What I'm getting at is, here's what I'm saying, Lo. Remember last year, we're talking about Joe Alt, and people are talking about Malik Neighbors, and they're like, no, we've got to get Neighbors, or we got to get Bowers. And we're like, hey, just think about, and how did it turn out? Alt, McConkey, bang, bang. You get them both. So kind of what I'm getting at is don't get stuck being attached to one prospect, because, man, they could pick any of 10 players at 22 if they don't trade back, and they're probably going to be graded almost exactly the same.
Right. And not just that, the way that Joe Ortiz and the way that Harbaugh, if Joe Ortiz, he's the chef, he goes and gets him the players that he needs, just the way that they're built, they put guys in positions for success. You look at the safety that everyone's talking about, and look where he was playing all over the field. Joe Ortiz, those guys come in and say, no, we're going to have our safety. He's going to be here. We're going to know what he's doing. So you look at the success that you have the best safety, come out pass rush. He can be a blitzer. He can play defensive end. I mean, you rush him off the corner. It's everything that you have, because you had the system more. So I know that Harbaugh in the coaching staff that he has, no matter what player they get, they're going to put him in position to make some plays. You know that.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, it's a lot of it is going to be predicated on what they're able to do in free agency. I'm just kind of running through. We already talked about Davante Adams. Could be Darius Slayton, just because he's sort of that straight 4-3 speed guy that can open things up. And now you can operate a little bit more underneath with Quentin and with Ladd McConkey. So that could be an interesting one. But again, it feels like he's going to get paid a premium as well because people have money. And, it's sort of one of those situations where the Giants need to sign a quarterback. He has not been happy there. They didn't franchise him. It just almost feels like he doesn't want to go back. He's not interested in that spot anymore, which is why he's going to be made available. That could be sort of that mid-tier wide receiver signing. If it's not Davante Adams or T. Higgins, you want that big name. Just kind of start thinking about the next tier. Bring back J.K. Absolutely think they should bring back J.K., but make sure you draft the number one back that can take some of that load off him. Because, look, when the Chargers had J.K. on the field, they're ninth in net rushing efficiency. When he's not on the field, 28th. So bring the guy back. And I think you're still going to get him, on a solid deal. We already mentioned guards and who's out there. Will Fries, Tevin Jenkins. Like outside of that, I think we talked about Zeitler and Patrick McCarry. Aaron Banks, we already talked about that one low last time we were talking 49er and whether or not he could be a nice value play. So that's kind of there. I don't remember who I was talking to about corner, because I said, look, if you're going to go out there with Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still, be good to get a vet out there with them, because it looks like Asante, maybe he comes back, but it feels like, well, they just kind of missed the majority of the year. The corners played well together. I think they'd be more apt to bring back Christian Fulton than they would to hand that money to Asante. But I wish I could give him credit. I don't remember who said it. He said, you know what? He goes, if it's up to me, I just keep drafting him, man. He goes, it's clear that Coach Klink can coach these guys up, man. And Jesse Minter knows how to put them in position. So he goes, I would almost look at that as a discount. Like, hey, we know what we can do with corners in this system with our coaches. Why go out and spend $7-8 million on a corner instead of spending $7-8 million extra bucks on a wide receiver or an interior lineman or a center? So that's something that, like, if you're looking at corners, you're like, oh, wow, Slade just got released and all these guys, he's DJ Reed, think Charvarius Ward. He's like, I don't think that lines up. He's like, to me, it's, that's what the best teams do is they figure out where they can get away with it. And then they can focus their resources where they need to. So like if Jahdae Barron is sitting there at 22, now like that makes sense because it's like, okay, well, now we've got 3 guys that we can play at corner for the next 5 years and be solid, be done. Don't have to spend all that much money on that position group. And now we can go throw money at these other spots. So that's one of the other interesting things that came out of there is, yeah, man, this is a team that should get, as long as Coach Klink is there and as long as Jesse Minter's coordinating this defense, draft them, man. Draft corners and take advantage of that discount in salary, because we certainly know how much money corners make, man. They get paid. So if you can get it, then that's another one to kind of think about and how you construct the team and where you invest it's a puzzle, man. And you're just trying to get all these pieces to fit.
If I were to ask you, Money, watching the way the Chargers played and we had to pick out a position, is it safe to say that you say the corners overachieved, was the receivers overachieved? If you said what group, like you just, because you're talking about how, plug and play, look what they're able to do with the corners. They played great and you got them at a great discount because the technique and the coaches were able to get them to play at a high level. Where do you think, what was more a surprise in any position on the Chargers, in your opinion? Is it receiver? Is it cornerback? Interior lineman? Offensive lineman? What shocked you the most?
I think you just hit it. It's interior defensive line, right? Like you think about how bad the defensive line, the interior of the defensive line has been, how they have been a sieve against the run year in and year out, and how they threw money at it, whatever it was 2 years ago when Brandon Staley was allowed to go out and pick his guys and got Linval Joseph and got Sebastian Joseph Day and they drafted Tito, and it was just terrible. They couldn't stop anybody. And then here we are, $30 million over the cap. You got to let go of Keenan. You got to trade Keenan, let go of Mike, restructure Khalil, restructure Joey, just to get these minimum guys in. And what does he do? He goes out and gets Tier Tart, minimum, goes out and gets Poona Ford, minimum, and they become one of the best interior line groups in the league. So I think what happens there then is, you start asking yourself, okay, did Puna Ford and Tier Tart have career years? And are they perfect fits or is it the system? Or is this system built, and are these coaches, Mike Elston and Jesse Minter and all, are these coaches so good that they could do that again? That, yeah, look, Puna's great and Tier's great, but we can go out and we can do the same thing. I think that's sort of what we don't know the answer to that. They do. They can kind of, I know this, watching the film, watching games back, Puna Ford is a monster and and Tier Tart. I think Tier Tart's got the best get off of anybody on this team. So, like, I would love to see both of those guys back. But again, everybody's got money. Everybody needs interior defensive line. Not everybody's going to pay $25 million for Milton Williams. So, what's the market for those guys? I'm hoping. To me, like, talking to people down in Indy, because the Elijah Molden signing happened while we were there, they were like, damn, they paid that guy. I was like, hey, dude, I thought that was kind of like right in line. And they were like, oh, I figured that was going to be another 1-year deal coming off the broken leg and the knee. I was like, he is so essential to what this team does by allowing, you already talked about it, Lo, by allowing Derwin to play slot defender, to play on the line of scrimmage, that they had to get him back. And they weren't going to mess around and lowball him and let him hit the market where all these teams have money. And then all of a sudden the price goes up an extra $1 million per year. I don't think I don't think enough people in the media recognize that players are going to get paid this offseason. There's a lot of extra money out there, and these guys are going to get paid. And I credit Joe and his staff for recognizing, let's not play around with this guy. It's worth too much to us. Having Alohi and Elijah. And by the way, Alohi will be up after this year, so you want to make sure at least you have now Elijah extended. So if Lowe's going to go and ends up getting a much bigger number than you can afford, or however that works, you at least have that one. Now you only have to find one instead of two. So I can't even remember why I got to that spot. Oh, you were talking about which position group. Right. So I think that's it. It's like, what do you want to? And I think they'll have that number. It's like, hey, Elijah, here's the number before the market opens. If you're good with it, we want you back. Let's do it. And I'm sure he looked at it and was like, yeah, let's do it, man. PFF's got me getting a 1-year, $2.5 million deal. I'll go ahead and take 3 years, 18. Great. Let's do it. And he's worth it. And I think they'll do the same with Puna, and they'll do the same with Tier. Like, hey, you guys are on 1-year prove-it deals, $1.5 million. How about a raise to $4 million? How about a raise to $3.5 million? We'll give you $8 million guaranteed. And like, that's how you can start to put this together and try to get all these guys back.
And I think they will. Like I said, I remember preseason, you and I were watching the games. I said, that Puna Ford, I was watching him. I said, this guy, he was bounced. He jumped out at me in preseason. It looked like, here's a guy that was trying to show I belong and I'm going to play well. And he ended up meeting all the expectations. So the Chargers, you already know, George, you already know who Harbaugh, the guys that they want, they're not going to let them leave this building. They're going to figure it out, whether it's Khalil Mack or this Puna, this organization, they are not going to let these guys get away. They're going to figure it out. Harbaugh's going to be on the phone with them. Come on, come on. I took care of you. Right. Think about his conversation with 52 with Khalil Mack. It's like, Mack, look, you can go out in sweats. I take care of you. I don't make – so I think that they're happy. They love Harbaugh. If you're a good worker, hard worker, he's going to reward you. So it'd be interesting to see what happens, especially in free agency, and see what guys can bring back.
Yeah, and look, and again, it's all complimentary. I think that's the one thing you have to remember. It's all complimentary. They have 10 picks. So they got 10 picks. We see what their picks are worth, right? We've seen 2 5th-round picks become starters at a premium position at corner, and we saw a first-rounder play like not just a first-rounder, but a current elite player, not an elite rookie, an elite player at right tackle. Ladd McConkey, their 2nd-rounder, not an elite rookie, an elite player at the position. So we know, they're high pick. And unfortunately, we don't know about Junior because he got hurt, and that's a bummer. But I got full faith that he and Dayon are going to end up being in the conversation as the best pair of linebackers in the league as long as Junior stays healthy. I still have full faith, in that. Boygby was a project in the 4th round. We'll see whether or not he's ready to step in. They said that from jump. They did not make any bones about that. That from training camp and rookie camp, they said, look, Boygby is someone that we're projecting and we're going to work with him. And he's a guy that's traits and we Bleav in, that he can get to this next level, and we're going to get him at a value based on what he can become, not about what he is. So that's one that'll be interesting. Did that happen? Were they able to develop him, and is he ready now to be a bigger part of this rotation on that interior defensive line? So, the Davante Adams thing, Cooper Kupp sounds like he very well may get cut, that no one's comfortable making a trade for him. I guess the Rams might not be taking on enough money, or maybe they're asking prices too, whatever it may be. But you're starting to hear that he could end up being a cut candidate. He's keep him in LA, and he's not necessarily to take the top off the defense type of receiver that you feel like you need, but he is, he's all heart. He gets open. He catches everything you throw at him. He's tough as nails, and there's a role for guys like that on the Chargers. What is their number one motto? Competitors welcome. Well, Cooper Kupp's as big a competitor as you're ever going to find. So that's one that could be interesting, and maybe they get him at a discount, because he wants to stay out here.
That'd be great if he stayed out here. He's in LA. He's already here. Don't have to move. Already got a facility. It'd be absolutely. I like Kupp, by the way. I think if you ask me, I'd love to see if they can get this guy here, especially if the Rams cut him. Were you surprised? A guy that you and I talked about a couple weeks ago? Were you surprised Deebo goes to the Commanders? Did you see that coming, or any clue?
I knew he was going. Yeah, I knew he was going, and I knew he wasn't a fit here on the Chargers. So that but to me, it's, if you're the Commanders and you think about having a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, and you're now going to be running mesh with Deebo and Jalen, it lines up. It's like, that's what now you're just going to trust the medical, and that your guys think he can stay healthy, because there's no, that value is not there at how much he's making as a straight wide receiver.
Agreed. Do you think he made Eckler expendable because they kind of do the same?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're kind of that gadget player, or no?
I think Eckler is so valuable. He's just such a good locker room guy. He's so, and like the going back to what we said about Cooper Kupp, competitors welcome, man. He's just tough as nails. He works his ass off. He's always the pound for pound strongest guy on the team. It sets a great tone. And still, with a pretty young team, with a young quarterback, I do think there's value in having Eckler in that backfield with him. I think we saw it with Justin Herbert, how valuable Austin Eckler was to him, and how much he trusted Eckler, and how, and he's good in pass pro. I think people forget what an important part, of being a back is, especially when you have a young quarterback who might weigh 195 pounds soaking wet. You better have a back that can pick up, and Eckler, even though he's diminutive, he's still strong as all hell, man, and he'll stand a linebacker up. So I do think, but look, that's what happens when you're sniffing 30 as a running back and you're making a big number. And it's all you've still got to make that number fit into that can. And so at the same time, I don't think it's someone the Chargers would bring back. I think it's more of, let's go draft one of these freaking big dogs at running back, whether that's a Quinshon Judkins. Let's see who else is out there. Devin Neal, Damian Martinez. I think and that's kind of what we were getting at. That's what we're talking about when I had a guy, I went out to dinner with someone on Monday, and I was like, hey man, who do I need to watch? Like what drills? He goes, let me tell you right now, there's one thing I would tell you to watch. He goes, it's Bashal Tutin's 40. He goes, make sure you're watching Bashal Tutin when he runs that 40, because he is electric. And he's just unfortunately had a bunch of injuries at Vatech. But man, you want to talk about a running back that if he gets the edge, it's over. It is over. And so that's sort of one of those interesting, hey, how do we feel about using a fourth round pick on a guy that might see 8 snaps? But those 8 snaps, man, it's going to pucker up on that defense, because if you miss, it can be 6 in a hurry. So it's kind of like one of the, like that's what I think, that's, at least for me though, that's what I love about the draft, is you can sort of see like, okay, I get it. I get why they, like Darius Davis was a perfect example, right? I remember when they drafted Davis, and it was really like, kickoffs are less important than they've ever been. Punters are better than they've ever been with their hang times. We rarely see returns. And then all of a sudden he shows up and you're like, oh yeah, now I get it. Because in a game of inches and a game of single scores, when your punter goes out, he might be great. But when he looks back there and he sees Darius Davis, he's like, okay, I can't screw this up. And next thing you know, he puts too much leg into it and it's a touchback and you're starting at the 20 and you're not pinned inside the 5. Or he shanks it and Darius has it and bang, here comes that sub 4.3 speed and you're screwed. And I do think there's so much value in that sort of mental part of the game of we've got to prepare for this guy. And so I do think there's kind of part of that as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, like you said, there's a whole bunch of guys that are worthy of the first round, the second round. And what are the Chargers going to do? Are they going to trade back if they, like you said, if the guys that they don't want for sure is not there? Do you trade back 10 spots to pick up another draft pick to say, look, because we need more than one player. One player is not doing it for the Chargers. We understand they're not one player away. So what is going to be the focus? How's Harbaugh and his staff? They're going to go in there with Ortiz and say, what is our objective? What is if we said, hey, what is the one thing that we need? Is it interior lineman? What is it? Is it offensive guard? Is it a guard? We know it's not tackle. Which part of the interior line, if we said we have to address? Okay, we might be losing Bosa. Where are we going to put the value? Is it a pass rusher? If we keep Puna, do we say, okay, we don't need a guy, maybe a 3 technique as much because we got a Puna 4. So how do they value? That's going to be the biggest thing is how the staff and Ortiz together say, okay, what's 1A and 1B? It's going to be interesting how they put a value because you and I can say, God, I'd love to say a running back. I think, but if I don't have,
no, I think you're right, though. I think running back is real. I think that's very real. If Omari and Hampton slides to 22, I think that is a very real possibility for them. But I do think it would be predicated on them feeling like, hey, we've got this guy circled and this guy circled that we feel pretty confident is going to be there at 55, or they've gone out and they've signed, an Aaron Banks and a Will Fries for a total of like $20 million. I'll say 2. And I didn't mean, did you have anything else? I don't want to jump in there.
No, I was just, my biggest thing is like, it's going to predicate, like you're saying, what happens in free agent is going to dictate what happens in the draft.
And one of and look, the biggest takeaway from the combine on the Chargers, I buried the lead. We're 40 minutes in here. Is that Joe Ortiz shared after his presser with when he did the scrum, and good on him for doing that, by the way. Not everybody does that because the podium it's a waste. It's a complete waste. Joe Ortiz is on the podium and you've got 3 Chiefs reporters there asking him Chiefs questions about trying to stop the Chiefs, and then you've got 4 people from Michigan that want to talk to him about Michigan football. They're Detroit reporters, so they're asking him questions about the University of Michigan and working with Harbaugh and how's Ben Herbert been and all that. And then you got 5 people from Baltimore that are asking him questions about his time with the Ravens. So I credit Josh and who runs everything over at the Chargers when it comes to these things, and Joe for saying, hey guys, let's get my beat writers and let me do a separate one with you guys over here. And then that way we can just focus on our Charger stuff and you can get what you came here for. So you're not leaving Indy without kind of getting everything you needed from the Chargers. So credit to Josh Ruprecht and to Joe Ortiz for doing that, because it wasn't on the podium. It was on the little side scrum where he shared, hey, we got Zion working out at center. And that's the biggest story, because one of 2, it shows you 2 things about this staff, I think, that's so important for Charger fans to recognize and appreciate. And that is, 1, Zion's a first-round pick. He's had a rough couple years, and they recognize that. It's not like, well, he's first-round pick. He's smart. He's huge. He's strong. It's got to figure this out. And let's try him at center and see if that's the solution, because if it's not, then we got to be thinking about 2 guards maybe. So let's get him worked out at center and see if that can be it, because he is an incredibly smart guy, an incredibly strong guy. And when I followed up and I was like, well, how does that reconcile? Help me out here. And they're like, well, he's so smart. You feel like if he's going to be calling protections and he's going to be that much more invested, maybe he sees it a little quicker. Maybe because he's got to do all of that as opposed to just reading and reacting while he's out there, but he's got to go through the mental rep before the rep itself, because he's got to figure out what everyone's supposed to be doing, that maybe that will help him process that tick quicker that we need to have for him to be more effective at his job. So that then also leads me to think that that they've also acknowledging, as much as they love Bradley Bozeman, and man, he might be one of the most beloved players in that locker room. Guys love him, and he is the leader of that offensive line room, even with Slater and stuff, and him being a first-year guy. Like, everybody talked about his leadership and how much they appreciate him. It's also saying, hey, this guy's great, but maybe it's more of a backup or a bridge or something like that, and we got to address center as well. So
that is
so
the lead.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know. So yeah. He's been working at center for a while. Did you notice that?
No, I never saw it. That's the first I ever heard of it, Lo. I mean, Joe said it. He's like, hey, we're working out. We're going to work out Zion at center. We're going to see if we can make that work. He just kind of said it in the scrum.
Wow. It could be interesting. Like you said, he's athletic, and the guy can move. He runs well. It should be interesting how, because it's different when you're hiking that ball, and then you got to get that hand back up there and be able to get, put it on the defender. They're going to play it predicated to that side, because you got to be able to snap the ball and then be able to recoil. So it's interesting. That's why I started my career at center, baby. Number 50. Number 50, baby. Pee Wee and Pop Warner. Your boy was playing center. I was a hell of a center. I was quick. I can pull. I could get down there. That's what I did, baby. That's what I did.
I'm sure you absolutely wrecked shop. I started my career as water boy. It was great. I'd get them full. Then I'd have the towels in case I had to wipe their face off.
Crazy, buddy.
Good. It's just the start. The offseason as important as the training camp season, as the rookie camp season, as the draft. Legal tampering period is going to open up by the time we do our next one. So hopefully that Slater contract gets done. I'd love to see a Poona Ford and a Khalil Mack contract get done. If you're telling me you got to pay Khalil $20 million a year, and the next sort of, or you're paying Josh Sweat $25 million a year, give me Khalil all day. You know what it is. You know how important he is. You know how much the guys love him. So it's going to be interesting. But I might as well just do a quick search real quick, make sure no other news is broken since we started recording this, as it's kind of coming fast. And we talked about Joe Thuney getting traded to the Bears. Made sense. Oh, the Seahawks released Tyler Lockett. So there you go. There's another wide receiver. Incredible someone who was drafted as a slot only, but was able to make a lot of bones on the outside. Yep. Unfortunately, Lockett a little bit old now, but always been one of my favorite players. But I've had a proclivity to appreciate Kansas State guys for some reason. They just always seem like they're pretty damn tough, no matter what position they play. That's about it. Looks like so. Going to be interesting. And hopefully it's tough to get the people excited about building on that 11-6 year. And next week we'll try and get, especially if stuff happens, I'll try to make it happen. I'm going to be down in Indianapolis for the Big Ten tournament, the Big Ten basketball tournament. So I'm going to be down there calling a couple games a day. But maybe there's an opportunity for us to knock some stuff out. So
no worries, buddy. Hope it works out, man. You're the best, brother. Appreciate it. I know you're busy. You're a man of many talents. So the people want you. We want you, money. We want you.
Hey, they want you. That's what they want, Lo. They want a center that was wrecking poor kids. They didn't want to go to school the next day in the 4th or 5th grade. This little kid ran over me and he stepped on my chest.
I was pretty tough. Well, you're the best, money. All
right. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it. Download, listen, watch it on the YouTube. Leave the comments. I'll dig in there for sure this week and try to reply to all you, any questions you may have. And hopefully we'll be back next week here on Bleav in Chargers.